Okay, I'm going to move in here into our presentation. Um, Once again, welcome. My name is Mark Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of the Indian Dispute Resolution Services. We go by IDRS Inc. We run a program within IDRS called the IDRS Acorn Project, and we've just termed our program the Acorn Project to kind of set it aside because a lot of people wonder, is this about dispute resolution? And the Acorn Project is our program that we provide small business training and technical assistance to Native entrepreneurs on reservation, off reservation. We work with people remotely, primarily in rural communities, but we also are expanding here in California into urban communities. And just a little hint, where am I located? I'm located in Plymouth, California. But our organization serves all across the country. We've worked in most states in the United States with many different tribes and Native organizations. And we have a partnership with the continuing education program of IAIA. We were out there last year providing training in November, and both just a general small business training, business planning, and also looking at financial literacy. And we're so thankful to be out there, and we look forward to coming back later on this year and providing additional training. So thank you to IAIA for having us. I want to welcome all the presenters online, all the participants online today. Thank you, and I hope you guys get a lot out of this. Feel free to ask questions. We're here to make sure that this is an open dialogue and that the participants get out of the webinar what they need to get out of it. If you need to reach me, my telephone number, 916-482-5800. And my email is mark@idrsinc.org. Our organization, in partnership with IAIA, provides technical assistance to participants of the webinars and training. We work with participants remotely, and so we'd be more than happy to help, and we'll tell you a little bit about that later on in the presentation. So let's get into this and what we're going to be talking about today. And I'll just say this before we get much further into the presentation. We're talking about QuickBooks, but instead of just launching into QuickBooks and telling you just what QuickBooks is about, I wanted to talk with you guys about the lead up into getting into something like QuickBooks. So for some extremely small businesses, QuickBooks may be too much. And, before we just recommend everybody go get QuickBooks or let you guys fend for yourself and say, is QuickBooks right for me? I want to start real basic and just quickly go over the purpose of record keeping. But before I do that, I want to kind of know where everybody's level is. And so we have a poll, and if we could take a minute here or so, and if everybody in the room, if they could vote and let us know what is your interest in QuickBooks, if you have been using it before, are you just starting out, do you have no knowledge about it? And so we'll go from there, and I think that will better inform me what we should focus on for the remainder of this training. So I'll shut up for about 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and let you guys vote. Okay, it looks like we have that one person has uses QuickBooks already, so that's wonderful. So some of this is going to be repetitive for you, but I think we're going to get in and talk about some of the different options that you might not have considered. But we're really in this presentation later on, we're actually going to be talking, I'm kind of making the case for using QuickBooks within the business. So I'm sorry, because you're already using it, you've already been convinced. But what I'll try to do is also talk about some of the tools and some of the ways that I use it, and hopefully from that you'll get some information out of it. And so I see several that are currently operating a business and need accounting software to help manage finances, and other people are starting about business and want to learn about record keeping. So great. Well, let's dive in and tell you guys all a little bit about what you should know about QuickBooks. So in starting with record keeping, and why I say that QuickBooks may be overkill for some, let's first talk about why do people need to do keep records in their business, or how does that help? So in the reason why we keep records, a number of reasons. It's going to help you operate your business, right? If somebody calls and you're running a retail business and they want to know if you have something in stock. Now, if you have a very small business, you may have memorized everything in your place and you're going to know. But if your business is a little bit larger, the nice thing about having is being able to keep records is to be able to go to a record and say, yes, I have that in stock, and be able to answer those questions for customers. Also, along the same lines, in generating sales, having customer lists, customer phone numbers, customer emails, being able to go out there and market to those customers. We want to keep those records. And I just want to say right here, it's not always going to be about QuickBooks. It may be about other forms of records, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. But you can do a lot of this from within QuickBooks as well. Obviously, one of the big reasons why we're keeping financial records is for preparation of taxes and other reports that have to go to governmental agencies, right? And this is not just about income taxes, but this could also be about sales tax. If you're in a jurisdiction that collects sales tax, could be other information as well that they need. I know for one instance, I was contacted one time by a person that ran a pest business, right? So a fumigator, and he wanted to know how we could set up in QuickBooks a system, because when they go out and spray a house, they have to document what chemicals that they actually sprayed, and those reports have to be provided to a state licensing agency. And he wanted to have a system in QuickBooks where he could be able to run a report and say, over this past month, these are the chemicals I've sprayed, how much I've used, etc. And so there's a number of different things. So it's not just financial records that you may have to report to a government agency. One of the big things that I always talk about in the business classes is making business decisions and planning, right? So it's not just putting this information in the computer system to never be used again, but it's also to be looking and pulling the records out and reports and saying, okay, why am I spending too much in telephone? How can I cut that? And the only way you're going to really be able to see that is that you have a report that has been able to cull all the different transactions you've had in telephone. And then you can go explore things. One of the things we also talk about is in this class, we do an in-person QuickBooks training, and I often talk about to individuals that we don't want to make them accountants. That's not the purpose, especially in 2 days, right? It takes a long time to be a bookkeeper and know exactly where transactions go. But one of the things that we want to do in familiarizing people with QuickBooks is just in running reports and being able to read reports. If you have employees that are managing your finances, being able to see if transactions are going into the right locations, and also if there happens to be theft. A lot of times, if you have somebody in a business that is misappropriating funds, they may be sticking transactions in an account that when you look at the report, you say, I know we didn't spend that much money on sugar this year, right? But by being able to read reports, then you can be able to go and investigate that. So that's another reason, another way that QuickBooks allows you to make business decisions. And then legal compliance, some of the same things I talked about before on the governmental issue. So different methods of record keeping, because when we're talking about QuickBooks is an electronic accounting system, a computerized based accounting system. So it makes it easy because the computer is doing a lot of work for you. But there's lots of different ways that people account for things within their business. I mean, financially, a lot of people are just going to use, back in the day when people wrote checks. I know this is, the term checkbook, talking about a checkbook is a little outdated, but back in the day, if you just read your checkbook register, it would show you the different transactions where you had spent money, your credit card statement, even having a notebook. If you're having very few transactions, I think a lot of people can do that within a notebook. So maybe moving up to a QuickBooks may be a little bit of overkill, but I think what's important and what I would emphasize, right? This webinar is not solely about doing, keeping records, but what I would say would be important is to at least start the process, even if you're doing it by hand in a notebook. It's important to keep the list of customers you have, the list of vendors, the transactions that you're making. And so even in the simple form, if you're doing it by hand in a notebook, it would be important. But some people, never graduate out of a notebook because the business isn't big enough. Or they may use an electronic form but not move all the way to a computerized accounting system. Use something like a spreadsheet, right? And of course, the biggest one out there is Microsoft Excel, but now there's even free options. If you're using Google, they have Google Sheets, and there's other online options as well. There used to be, people use specialty accounting forms. You would have ledger books and things and write the transactions in there. But of course, when you're doing that and keeping T accounts, there's always because you're doing everything by hand, there's always the possibility that you could have errors in moving. And it obviously took a tremendous amount of time. And the larger your business, the larger amount of time. I mean, back in the day, you would have lots and lots of different accountants, that would have to work on certain industries, or within a business, because everything would be done by hand. Whereas today, a lot of that work has been removed because a computerized accounting system is going to do the work for you. And that's what we're talking about next when we look at QuickBooks. So let's get in and talk about some of the, I'm actually going to go kind of an overview of what the types of things that you would want out of your a computerized accounting software, and then we're going to look at a couple others before we dive into QuickBooks. So what do we want out of our software? We want it to track invoice and accounts receivable. And accounts receivable is just if you are sending bills to people or invoices, you're invoicing somebody, so they're not paying you at the time when you render a service or sell a product. They're going to pay you later. That's what accounts receivable is. And we also want to track expenses, the money that we're spending, and also accounts payable. And accounts payable is money that we owe. Those are bills that are coming in. We want to be able to run reports and see, a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet, see what money we have. Depending if we have employees or not, we may want our computerized accounting software to give us payroll. And now with the internet, a lot of these computerized accounting software packages are able to do a lot of really cool things. One of the things is process credit card payments, and you can do that from within the software. So let's talk about the providers out there, because I'm not going to say it's endless, but there are tons and tons and tons of different providers. Obviously, QuickBooks is the number one provider of accounting software in the world. They really dominate both desktop, and they have an online version as well for QuickBooks, and a number of versions of even those software. And they do, and the company that produces QuickBooks is Intuit, and they make a number of financial products. They are also, I believe, the largest provider of tax preparation software. They own TurboTax. And then if you are a tax preparer, they're doing things like Lacert, and Lacert is the number one tax preparer software. So there, when it comes to financial accounting, QuickBooks is the major player that's out there. But there's others. An online a platform that's really popular now is FreshBooks. And we'll look at FreshBooks in just a second. But I wanted to let you guys know that there's tons of others out there. Xero, Zoho Books, Wave, and we might do something later in the future broadcast about Wave, because it's actually a free platform. And so, that might be a good way to get people's feet wet. But Wave, I don't know how much longer it'll be free, because the company was just bought out by H&R Block, which is another big tax preparation company. Cashew, GoDaddy Bookkeeping, Sage, et cetera, et cetera. It just goes on and on. And actually, Sage, that last one, whereas QuickBooks has really dominated the small business market, Sage, for a long time, has been the company that would provide Fortune 500 type accounting systems to very large companies. When I first started as a bookkeeper and I was working in larger manufacturing type businesses, I'd often be working on Sage, different products, Moss 90 and different programs like that, because they had much more robust packages for large companies. But just wanted to let you know there's tons out there. And really what you're wanting to do is you want to get something that works for you. But a lot of these programs are going to be doing some of the same things, right? And some of the basic stuff. And I think if it's just basic accounting, if you don't have employees, you don't have like a store, so you don't have to keep an inventory, most of these packages are going to work okay for you. And that's why we want to do a webinar on Wave, because if you're going to want a free option, that may be another one. And there's other free options. I think ZipBooks is another free option. But I wanted to compare here because we have two options that are very similar, and these are kind of, as far as online providers, I would say these are the two online providers. It's QuickBooks Online product versus FreshBooks. And so what I gave you here is the lowest option if you're paying for an online product. And so the QuickBooks Online, and this is their self-employed version, it's $4 a month, but that is only for the first 3 months. And they change these sales. Sometimes they're 50% off. Sometimes they're like right now, I think they're 70% off. And what it allows you to do is just very basic accounting. Track income and expenses, do receipts, miles. You can invoice people. And the light version, which is on the right side of FreshBooks, they're also doing a lot of the same type of things, right? Unlimited invoices, entering expenses. One of the things that they do for their price, because at the end, after 3 months, they're also $15 a month, is they're going to allow you to accept credit card payments, take bank transfers. So you can see if there's certain things that you need along those lines, and we'll go into some of those in detail in just a few minutes, that this FreshBooks option might be for you. And actually, FreshBooks is kind of billed as the person who's a freelancer. So I think on this platform here, on this light platform, and it says right here under the price, you can only have 5 billable clients. And what that means is you can only have 5 customers that you can send invoices to. So you could see if you're just a very small freelancer, and you work maybe with the same client, maybe it's a very large company and you're doing graphic design work for them, having something like a FreshBooks that gives you a very basic accounting system makes it very easy, because that's what a lot of people like about the FreshBooks product, is that it's very easy. Then, and $15 is a manageable fee a month, right? And so you only have one client that you're really emailing and sending invoices to. FreshBooks it may work for you, but as you move up and you get 50 clients, right? The next package up is 50 clients. The price really jumps up. So you really have to see and dive into all these different offerings to see what exactly do I need. And I would say for most of the platforms that I talked about before, just go back here, and they're talking about like FreshBooks, especially Wave. I don't know. I think Zero is a little bit more robust. But if you're running any type of store and you want to account for inventory, very difficult, especially in the low level programs like FreshBooks. You have to do weird workarounds, and it's not really a true inventory. So be thinking about in your business what type of business you're running, right? If you're running a service type business where you're just selling, your time, a lot of the basic programs are going to work for you. But when you get into a larger business, you have lots of customers. If you're getting into something where you have an inventory and you have to, you want to keep track of that inventory, a lot of the free and these platforms that are designed for freelancers really aren't going to work. And that's when you want to come over to a more robust program. And I'll just say why QuickBooks versus something like Sage, because Sage is a large, Sage will offer a product that will do inventory as well. There's other ones that are out there. And there's a couple reasons for me. One, we'll talk about cost in a minute. And that's really one of the selling points for QuickBooks for me. But also another thing that I think is really important is the availability of assistance. Because QuickBooks is the largest platform out there, there's always people that are using it. When you go and let's say you need to get help from an accountant, a CPA, maybe he's doing taxes for you, maybe you just need him to look over your what do you call that? Your company file. Everybody knows about QuickBooks. Everybody's using it. Whereas it may be a lot more difficult. You may be more limited on finding somebody to assist you in those other products. So that's why, when we are, so IdeaRest, we're a nonprofit, and we get audited every year, and we have an auditor that comes in. I just give him my QuickBooks file, right? I don't have to do anything special. And he has QuickBooks, and, because it's so common, he just goes from there and is able to do the audit, and it really reduces the time. So be thinking about that as well, because as small business owners, one of the things, and we're going to talk about it in just a second. I keep saying that, but there's always stuff coming up. And like I said before, I don't want you guys to have to be accountants. I just want you guys to know enough to be able to operate your business. And so there's going to be times when you're probably going to need to get outside help. And when you do that, it's good to have people that know the platform that you're working with. Okay, so let's say we've decided to move on to QuickBooks, and we want to decide, should I go online, which is now QuickBooks is really pushing the online platform, or do we want to go offline, get a desktop version of QuickBooks? And ultimately, just to spoil the surprise, I use a desktop version of QuickBooks. I'm going to show you what the desktop version looks like. That's what I'm going to run through some examples in the webinar. But online, a lot of people are using online. And this right here is the different levels of QuickBooks Online. And so I'll have the next slide, you're going to see a comparison between online and offline. But here you can see the different price levels and what you get for that. And I would just ignore the bolded price, the $8 a month, the $12 a month, because that is only going to be good for 3 months. So essentially what you're going to be paying is $25 a month, $40, $70, $150. And you can see as you move up, you get more features. And what you really have to see is, are those additional features important to my business? So if you're running even a small retail store and you want to track inventory, the lowest package that you're able to get is this QuickBooks Online Plus at $70 a month, because as you'll see, the third one over there, that's the first one that tracks inventory. So I think what you're going to have to do is, if you did want to go with QuickBooks Online, you're going to have to go and look at these features and then look at the additional features that you're getting in the additional other packages and say, are those things that are necessary for my business, things that are just nice, and things that I can live without? Because I think one of the things is, in our business, we want to reduce costs. It's how we make profit. So if you can live without it, I would definitely advise you to go to a lower level online package if you can. So, but like I said, we're going to be talking in this class about the Desktop Pro version of QuickBooks, and so Desktop actually comes in two different varieties, actually three different varieties: Desktop Pro, Desktop Premier, and Desktop Enterprise. And we'll see here a comparison of the two packages. The software that I have is Desktop Premier, but you'll notice that most of the features that are in Premier are in Pro as well. There's just a few additional that, except for very specialized businesses, are not going to need. I actually get software that's discounted because we're a nonprofit, and so the software that they give us is Desktop Premier. It's the nonprofit version of that. But if I was starting, I was doing my own books separately, I would just buy Desktop Pro. And you'll notice the price difference here, and we'll talk about that as an advantage. The Desktop Pro is right now, this was Amazon. I took this picture last week. That's $174.99, and that's a one-time purchase. And if you'll notice, if we'll go back to the slide here, if you were to go something, and I'll say Plus is probably comparable to it, you'll see in 2 or 3 months that desktop package will be cheaper than going with the online version. And of course, with the online version, you have to pay continuously each month, whereas with the Desktop Pro package, you can use this package. And I know some people that are using their accounting software, their QuickBooks installation for years and years and years. Okay, so, and I apologize that this is so small, but you can go onto the QuickBooks website, and all these charts are there as well. But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of the Pro and the Premier. And if you're buying them from QuickBooks, you can see that's a lot more expensive. So that $299.95 is from QuickBooks, buying them directly from Intuit, the company that manufactures it. Whereas if you go to Amazon, you're going to be $120 off of that price, right? So the $300 price point there for Pro, that's the exact same thing that Amazon was selling for $180. And you'll notice that most of the features in Premier you're getting in Pro. The only couple things that they're adding is things like forecasting, which a lot of people are probably not going to be doing, especially small businesses within QuickBooks, and industry specific features. So if you're running a construction company, there may be certain things within Premier. They may have a special file for construction companies that will suggest different accounts for you to get and different reports that you should be running. The same thing for nonprofit. They have certain reports that are there that are industry specific for nonprofit companies. But most people don't need those things. And if you have somebody that works with you, a bookkeeper, or even hiring a bookkeeper, just one time to help you set up the package, they can tell you how to run very similar reports without having to upgrade to that higher cost. So even a very small business can get in and have a QuickBooks installation on their computer and be off and running for about $180 and have most of the features that you would have to pay online at a much higher cost, and still be able to run inventory. And you can see that's a key thing. I mentioned inventory. because I've done bookkeeping for several businesses that have that are wholesalers or retailers, and they're keeping track of their inventory within the QuickBooks system, and so that's a key component, right? And that's where the prices really start to creep up on the software packages. So let's just quickly talk about, because I'm sure a lot of people would like to go to QuickBooks Online just because it's easier. You don't have to mess around with installing the software in a computer. You can see easier to access. You could use it on a Windows computer. You could use it on a Chromebook. If that's all you have, you can use it everywhere. If you have the app that's in the background there, you could access your QuickBooks account from your telephone. So that's the really nice feature of having online access. You don't have to download the program. You don't have to update it, right? Because it's continually updated. No backing up the program to make sure that there's no data loss. One of the also key features that I see for having QuickBooks Online is multiple users. So if I was here in California, and I have my associate Lynn that's on the line as well. She's in Oklahoma, and I wanted her to also work in the same program in the same QuickBooks. That would be very difficult to do from a desktop installation, but it wouldn't be an issue at all to do it online. She could log in, have her own login, and I could be logging in, and we could be working in QuickBooks together. It also makes it much easier if you do at tax time want to share your QuickBooks file with, let's say, an accountant. You can even create a special login for that person so that they don't have your own login, right? So they provide even security features there so that other people can access your account, people that you need to access and give permission to. So that's really one of the one of the features that having online QuickBooks provides. Another thing, and even though this is available as well in the desktop version of QuickBooks, I think integrations are just other types of programs working with QuickBooks, and integrations are much easier with online programs, because if your computer is not working or not connecting to the internet, those integrations are going to break. And so with the QuickBooks Online, it's always online, and so those integrations are always working behind the scene. And we'll talk a little bit about those integrations. And sometimes those integrations are even cheaper with QuickBooks Online. So you have to really see if I really need these certain tools to work with my QuickBooks, and these certain tools are going to cost extra for the desktop version versus the online version. Is it worthwhile to go desktop versus online? So you might have to pencil this out a little bit before you make a final decision on if you want to go into a QuickBooks desktop or a QuickBooks Online, or even move into QuickBooks at all from one of the free programs. Okay, so let's talk about the offline advantages. So, I got two offline advantages there, so sorry about that. So the first real one is the cost, and really the cost starts to add up. It's not just in the monthly fee, but it's over years, because one gentleman that I occasionally help with his bookkeeping, he's been using his QuickBooks program since I believe it's 2015 or 2016. And if it's 2016, he would have bought it the year previously. They normally release it the year previously. And so he has been using that and not paying any additional fees, and has been able to run his business for the past 4 or 5 years, right? And hasn't had any fees for his accounting software. Where and he runs an inventory. So you can see if he was having to pay QuickBooks Online, he would be having to pay $70 a month. And he'd have to be paying that for 12 months times 4 years. So you can see that really is a substantial cost. Some people, have a sizable organization, and it's worthwhile because of the other features within online. It's worth it to expend that cost. But for a lot of the businesses that we work with, a lot of micro enterprises, one-person solo entrepreneurs, or maybe they have an employee or two, but they're also running things like inventory. The cost is a big issue, right? And it's a big barrier to preventing them to get in to getting into something like an accounting program like this. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm always pushing cost. So, for people that have been working on QuickBooks, it's familiar. Whereas on QuickBooks Online, you have to learn kind of a new program. One of the nice things about offline is it is more robust, just easier, just more powerful when it comes to inventory. I'm sorry, I talk a lot about inventory. I work a lot within the inventory, and it has a lot more features that the online doesn't do. Plus, it's faster. When you install it into your desktop, there's no issues with internet connections. So it's just as powerful as your computer is, as fast as the software will run. And so it'll be extremely snappy. Whereas, if your computer, they do have a downloadable version of the QuickBooks Online. However, I believe that still needs to be connected to the internet. And so if your internet is down, you don't have access to your accounting software. Whereas if you have it on the desktop version, you always have it. So, and if your internet's very slow, that's going to make the processing of transactions take a lot longer. And I think a lot of these questions for somebody that's just getting into the QuickBooks package, they may say, "Is that really a big deal?" For most people, it's not going to be a big deal. But there's been times, like for one of the businesses that I work with, this is a gentleman that sells tire supplies. At the end of the year, he does an inventory. And so when he's doing an inventory, he goes through he's got a little warehouse that he keeps all his inventory in, and he goes and counts it. And then he gives me the sheets. His inventory is quite large. It comes on 200 sheets. And I have to go through and look at all his changes. Now, there's not 200 pages worth of changes. A lot of pages, he has the correct amount, but I have to go through each one of those pages to see if any of those items have been changed and enter those. And if you're doing that online, that's going to take a long time, especially if you're making, hundreds of little line item changes. And so that's also the power. The larger the program comes, the more data you put in it. The offline version becomes a lot more faster than the online version. And another advantage, especially if you're doing bookkeeping, if somebody here wants to become a bookkeeper or is running multiple businesses, a really nice advantage, and this goes back to the cost as well, it is with a desktop version, you can have as many companies as you want. So on one QuickBooks package, and I'll show you today, I'm going to create a new company for you in just a second here. If I was doing the QuickBooks Online version, I would have to pay another subscription fee for that new company. So if you happen to be running multiple companies and you're worried about cost, there's really no argument. I mean, it's going to be QuickBooks Desktop because it's just going to be so much cheaper for you than having to go to the online product. Okay, so now that I've talked about it, I don't know if I've convinced you as of yet, but I want to show you a little bit about QuickBooks. But before I do, I want to just quickly talk about if you were setting up. So if you're going to be starting a business, it's going to be really easy for you, right? If you're going to start QuickBooks from day one, everything is going to be fresh. You're not going to have to worry about bringing in old transactions. But if you're going to be starting QuickBooks in an existing business, there's going to be a little bit more a challenging process that you have to go through. One of the things I would recommend is starting from the beginning of whatever your fiscal year is. And for most small businesses, that's going to be in January, right? And run along with the calendar tax season. And so, because what happens if you start, let's say you start with QuickBooks in June and you want to run profit and loss for the year, well, you don't have 5 months there, right? January through May. To tell you, what the true profit loss is. So obviously when you're starting from the beginning of the year and you run that annual data, it'll all be in there. I mean, it doesn't have to be if you're not worried about some of those running reports like that. start whenever you want, but that's one of the issues. Another thing is when you have an existing business, especially the larger and more complex it gets, you're going to have things that carry over from time period to time period, and those are going to be things like a loan. It may be like assets that you own. So if you're in filing for taxes, things like things you depreciate, those are not expenses. So you have to bring those assets over, and with the depreciation expense as well. I don't want to get too technical, but those are some of the things that you have to be thinking about when setting up QuickBooks. And that's why I talk about it might be a good idea to hire assistants, not to have a full-time bookkeeper, right? Because that kind of defeats the purpose of trying to save money on the package. But one of the things that you could hire assistants is to have a bookkeeper come in and help you set up QuickBooks the first time. And depending on the size of your business and how much revenue you're bringing in, it might be worthwhile to bring in a bookkeeper for an hour or two a month. And I'll just let you know that that's what I have done for several clients. I only visit them maybe sometimes I don't even go for a couple months, or I do something remotely for them. And we're talking about $25 or $30 per hour, right? So you could have somebody help you with your QuickBooks and getting your accounting and making sure that you're have all the information in there is correct, and it may only cost you $30-$60 a month, and it's a business expense that's worthwhile. And I'll let you know, as far as the ease of using QuickBooks, one of the people that I've worked with, he is I think he's 75 years old, and he still uses QuickBooks every day. He's terrible on the computer, has all kinds of issues with it. I mean, trying to get him to attach a file, just in an email, just terrible. But he knows his QuickBooks enough to enter transactions, to enter invoices, to enter bills. And then I come in there and I help him, for an hour or two a month. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reconcile his bank statements, reconcile his credit cards, clean up any issues that he has, and that's all I have to do, right? And that keeps him set and keeps his accounting system going. So there may be reasons why you want to get assistance. So with that, we didn't just go from 3 to 8. What I want to do is I want to pull up my QuickBooks now, and what I need to do is stop sharing this, and we're going to share my screen, and let's hit share here, and hopefully you guys can all see this now. And this is QuickBooks. This is the desktop version of QuickBooks Premier. We don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to show you some of the features. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to create a new company to get into QuickBooks and show you how easy it is to get in there. And there is a longer interview process that will ask you things like sales tax, will ask you things like, are you having inventory? And it'll walk you through all of those questions to help you set up QuickBooks correctly depending on your business type. But we're going to do a quick one today. I'm just going to create a new company. So if you wanted to go that longer interview, you'd come down here to advanced setup. But I'm just going to go start setup. All it's asking me to do is I'm going to use my DJ business. I'm going to put Mark's DJ, and I'm going to put let's see here. I'm going to say I'm in the entertainment business. And, invalid industry. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm just going to put general service-based business. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to help provide different accounts that is going to be suggested for my business type. And since they don't have an entertainment business in there, we'll use general service-based business. And what type of business you are, and type that's different from the industry. It's really the business structure. Are you a sole proprietorship? Or are you an LLC or corporation? And then you'll choose appropriately. So I'm a sole proprietorship and create company. and it's going to create the company file, and we're should be in here. Just taking a moment. And 90%. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of show you around. And when you're setting up QuickBooks, you're going to find things that you'll continually set up. But what I want to do is just kind of give you an overview. But you can see just by entering a few pieces of information, you're in the QuickBooks program and ready to work, ready to enter invoices, enter bills if you want to do that, set up how you want to do. And another thing I should say is QuickBooks can take you from as simple as you want to go to as complex as you want to go. I do even my personal family accounting on QuickBooks, and then I can also, run businesses that are having 10,000 items in inventory and run that through QuickBooks as well as I do the nonprofit software accounting as well. So you can see all different types of businesses, all different sizes of businesses can all be done through QuickBooks. So this is the QuickBooks home screen, and you're going to notice it looks a lot like other things that you have on programs that you're used to, right? You have the file, edit menu, view. Those are very similar to things you would find in Microsoft Word, other Microsoft Office programs. And if I switch this here, I'm going to put this view and make it a top icon bar. Now we have a top ribbon up here, and this looks very similar to what we would see in the Microsoft packages as well, where they have a top ribbon and access to different functions within Microsoft right from that ribbon bar. So we don't have a whole lot of time here, but what I wanted to do is just kind of give you an overview of some of the things that QuickBooks can do and how easy it is to get into the program. And we could spend hours and hours really talking about QuickBooks. But, if I just go down here, just a couple things I want to say. There is a lot of things that QuickBooks has tried to shoehorn in into the QuickBooks package. So one of the things is like shipping. There's the QuickBooks Shipping Manager, and you can actually manage your FedEx, UPS, and USPS, your postal service accounts, right from QuickBooks. But one of the things is, I think when people look at a QuickBooks package like this and see all these different options, all of these drop downs, and there's all these different things to click on, and think, boy, that's overwhelming. I want to be totally honest with you. A lot of those things I don't use. I ship things with the Postal Service, but I just go to a separate account. It's just as easy and less complicated instead of running that all through my QuickBooks. It may be an option that you want to do, and I'll give you an example that something that a lot of people like to do. Here's something like for bank feeds. And with a bank feed, you can actually connect the bank feed to your bank, and it will actually transfer the information into your QuickBooks so you don't have to retype it. And let me go over here to my web browser. So this is actually at Wells Fargo. I don't know if you guys could see this, but I'm hoping you can. I'm going to highlight it here. So you can actually see you have to pay $15 a month for the desktop access. But if you do that, or $25 for the bill pay option, you can even pay bills directly from your Wells Fargo account, and you can get real-time statistics on your desktop access for $15 a month. So there's a fee. If you look down there to the third item, QuickBooks Online, you can do a lot of those things through your QuickBooks Online account totally free of charge. So you can see there's sometimes the banks even charging for a feature for a QuickBooks desktop that you could get that feature online for free. That's where I was talking about penciling it out to see, okay, if I do this, is it more worthwhile to go with online versus offline? I will say this, though. With any of these banking products, and there's many different banks have them. Here's Bank of America, and they have some free features down here. for QuickBooks, both for online and desktop, and then they have some more advanced integration. Any of those banks should allow you to download it's like an Excel spreadsheet of your transactions. You just rename it to what they call an IIF form, and that can be imported into QuickBooks. So you don't have to retype all that data. But if you want to know what I do, and no matter if it's IDRS, if I'm doing my personal, if I'm doing other stuff, we don't ever connect with the bank. Some of the people that I work with view it as a security risk. So we always just hand type things, and the transactions are never. We don't have thousands of transactions where it would just take me, days and days to get that information in. It's easy enough to do in a very short process. So we could go through all the different features that we have talking about backing up the software. One of the things they said you don't have to back up, or you don't have to pay for backup. One of the things you can create local backups and use services like storage software. Here's Microsoft OneDrive, the first one. There's that's Dropbox and Google Drive. A lot of these offer free storage, like Dropbox offers 2 gigabytes free. That's more than enough to store your QuickBooks backup file, and especially when you're starting, when you don't have a lot of transactions in it. You can store hundreds of files actually in 2 gigabytes. So you can see even some of the things that you would be paying for online. There's quick and easy and free workarounds to getting those same type of services for a free and getting the same type of functionality within the QuickBooks software. Other things in here, and I just want to say there's all kinds of stuff that QuickBooks will do, all kinds of functionality. Here's a calendar, and if I had bills I needed to pay, and actually I'm going to switch out of this company just real quick, and I'm going to go into this sample products-based business. So this is a company that's doing inventory. This is a sample file that QuickBooks offers. And the company is called Rock Castle Construction. And I like to have my top icon bar. But what you'll see now is when I go back here and go back to the calendar, you'll actually see a lot of different transactions on there. When things were entered, when bills are due, and that's the value of the calendar. It has a lot of functionality within that. There's a to-do list you can put, and you could assign those to different customers. So here's a task. You need to call Doug about the grout in the kitchen, call Lynn about the back porch, right? So they're talking about customers that they have, and they're putting those items in a to-do list. But if you so all that is in QuickBooks. But if you want to be honest, I never use any of that stuff. I use if I want to write a to-do list, a lot of times I'm just writing it on paper. I don't keep it electronically. So don't be overwhelmed and think you have to use all the functions. But just want to let you know that those functions are there. But let's say that we want to enter a bill, and because I did at least want to enter some transactions before we run out of time. So we have a bill. And so I'm going to enter a bill here. That's all I do. I just go and click the bill. And, you have a bill in front of you that you need to pay. And I'm just going to pay PG&E. That's our electricity company. They're a little bit notorious. They're not a vendor. So I want to create the vendor. You can see you don't have to do a whole lot. All I do is quick add that now PG&E is in my vendors. I'll just use today's date, 2/21/20. The amount due, I'll just say, is $176.80. And then I can come down here and put where are those expenses. And I'm just going to come and look and see where we have utilities, gas and electric. I just select that, and I do save and close. And I've entered a bill. And if you were to run a report, let's say I wanted to run a report of today. I'm going to do today's date. I'm going to do, hold on, let's do it to 221 20, 221 20. You'll actually see there is the bill that I just entered. So it's basically showing that we have a loss of 176.80. That's because we've not taken in any income, and we have, but there's our bill. And if we wanted to pay our bill, we can go in here, and here's our pay bills. And so we'll come down here to PG&E. There's our PG&E. We can select that, pay the selected bill, and then we can print the check. One of the nice things is with QuickBooks, all this stuff is available for the QuickBooks. So I order checks. If you guys are familiar with the Warehouse Club Costco, I get very nice checks. I think I pay something like $40 for 500 checks. Last me for a very long time. I know most people don't write checks anymore. And then when I print this check, it goes on a check right through my printer that is designed specifically for the QuickBooks software. And if I wanted to go back and keep information about vendors, right? So there's a whole vendor center here. And this vendor center, if I come through here and go to PG&E, and right now I don't have anything about PG&E, but I could put a lot more information about PG&E in there. And this isn't so critical on the vendor side, but on the customer side, I'll go here to my customers, and a lot of these customers are already in here. So here's Miss Christy Abercrombie, and she has her name. She has, her phone number, her email address, her address. I can keep information about her payment accounts, what terms I have her on, and terms are how quickly she pays. If I have to charge sales tax, and other additional information. And you could even put additional fields in there that aren't in there for custom things for your business. So QuickBooks can be something where you're not just creating invoices. And let me just show you I'm not going to create an invoice because of lack of time here, but I'll just show you an invoice that's created. So here's Brian Cook, and you can see here is some. So this is a product-based business. So there's both an inventory and service. And if you'll look up here on the top, you'll notice a number of different items that are sold, and these are coming out of inventory. And then you have a number of different things that are labor. And right now, I think this invoice might have been voided. That's why there's zeros. I'll go to one that has something. You can actually see here. And so you can actually see how some of these things could get complicated. You can see how much of the percentage has been completed. So if you're a contracting company, there are certain things that are things that you might want to compare to an estimate. And you'll notice maybe you've given them an estimate of $350 in the removal of labor. You've already completed 80%, so now you're billing for 20% for the remainder, or 20%. Yeah, 20% is available, and the total amount is 70%. So it can get very complicated. I don't want to make it real complicated for you, but what I wanted to say is QuickBooks can be a system where you're not just creating financial, keeping track of financial things like sales, like bills, but you can also go in here and keep track of your customers as well. And if we were to run another report, we'll just give you a report, and I'll go this fiscal year. So this is looking at your income statement for the the fiscal year. And this is something that you're going to be reporting on taxes. And this is also something that can allow you to plan. You could say, okay, I had a lot of labor income, this year. Is that good? Is that better than last year? Is that something that my customers really want? Should I start focusing on that? You can also come down here to your expenses, and you can start seeing, is there anything like right now? There's gross wages. Well, that sounds about right, because you're earning so much money on labor income. So you probably have a lot of wages that you're paying people, because people are paying you for that labor. But if you had something where you're up here and you're making only $100,000 in labor income, and you come down here and you have $110,000 that you're spending, you could say something's wrong there. So this is the real nice planning feature of QuickBooks. And as you come down here, here's your net income. Just real quick, other reports, you can see there's over 150 reports here, all kinds of different things, whether it's to do with sales, vendors. But of course, the other thing is your balance sheet. And the balance sheet tells you, it's a snapshot in time, tells you what you have now, how much is in checking, what fixed assets you own, vehicles, buildings, equipment, what you owe, and it has a number of different things. So this is a very complex balance sheet. And then, of course, what your equity is worth. So a lot of stuff you can do. I'm getting pressed for time here, so I want to get back to the presentation and end it and let you guys know. Let's see here. Okay, let me get back here to Adobe Connect and stop sharing. And let me go back and recently share. Okay, so to close out here, I would love to have shown you a whole bunch of other things in here, as far as entering lots of different transactions, things you can do in the banking, entering credit card transactions, all that kind of stuff. But we don't have a lot of time. But what I do want to let you know is that you may still have questions, and you may have questions about these different packages. You may have questions if computerized accounting software is right for you. So I want to let you know where you can get help, both where you can get help just now on these questions and where you can get help if you decide to move along to QuickBooks. So there's lots of different places. That's one of the nice things about QuickBooks. Like I said before, there's lots and lots of places that you can go and find help. There's a local bookkeeper, that could probably help you out. There's QuickBooks technical support. Online, there's tons of information. Another thing I don't have here, another forum that does this on Reddit, another popular bulletin board system. They have a dedicated QuickBooks forum. There's online training platforms like lynda.com, Udemy. Oftentimes you can get lynda.com free at your library. And of course, there's IDRS Acorn Project. One other thing, IDRS Acorn Project is us, in case you don't know. And one other thing I want to show you on this last slide, as far as getting support. So after, I believe it's 30 days, if you were to buy the desktop version, so you paid $180, you have Desktop Pro, after 30 days, you would actually have to pay for support. But if support is something that is going to be really important to you, if you're going to have a lot of questions, you can still go the desktop route and get that support for a fairly low cost. And you'll actually notice here, and you'll see this when you go on QuickBooks. If you turn this on, you'll notice that there's Pro Plus 20. So that's the exact desktop Pro software that we have. But if you upgrade to the Plus, you turn that on, what they do is even though it's desktop software, they change it to a subscription model. So you'll be able to use that software for 1 year. So it does increase the cost, right? Like I said, the one gentleman bought QuickBooks 4 years ago and is still using it. But he has me to answer questions, and you may not have somebody, you may not want to go to a bookkeeper. And choosing to get support from QuickBooks, and they're going to help you on things like, okay, why doesn't why isn't this software working the way I thought it would be? Why isn't this report running? So you can call them and ask them questions. And it's unlimited customer support. And essentially, it changes the software to essentially $150, but you're paying that yearly as opposed to a one-time expense. But I did want to let people know that because that might be an option, and it still reduces the cost of the online software, but it gives you kind of a mid-range cost where you're having to pay every year, but you're getting that support. And finally, I want to just quickly talk about IDRS and how IDRS can help you. So we're a small business technical assistance provider. And even though we're based out in California and Lynn is in Oklahoma, we have different consultants all over the country. But we provide remote one-on-one technical assistance for people that are in these trainings. So if you're attending the training today, you're totally eligible. We'll do our best to help you any way we can. And actually, this is a program that's being funded by IAIA, so the Continuing Education Program. So many thanks to them. So just a couple of ways that you can connect with us. Our website is nativebiz.org. There you can sign up for our newsletter. We have all the different events that are coming up.
About today's
We're putting up our recorded
you
webinar.
Can definitely contact Mark. There's his information. And as Mark mentioned, this is a webinar series that's being provided by IAIA Continuing Education. So if you need to reach out directly to them, I have included Jonathan Breaker's information. Down there below in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see that there are links to our respective websites. So if you do need technical assistance, you can just click on that IDRS Acorn Project link, and that will take you directly to the website. I do want to let everyone know that today after the webinar, Jonathan will be sending out an electronic survey to everyone. And we ask that you please fill the survey out and make sure so that is really going to help Jonathan to know what kind of training that you'd like to see. I know he's trying to plan a live workshop there in June, and we haven't decided on a topic yet, so that will help him know what kind of topics you guys might be interested in for the live workshop as well. And remember that we do have 3 more webinars coming up. The next one is Friday, March 27th, Working with Art Galleries, and that one is actually taught by Melissa Malero, who is an alumni of IAIA. And in April, we have Facebook Marketing for Artists, and in May, Selling Your Art through Etsy. So that's it. We appreciate all of you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and leave this webinar room open for a minute in case you need to maneuver to those web links. And if you have any last-minute questions or comments, please feel free to type those into the chat box.